What it is, what it ain't. It's your girl Umbrella, and I am back with another video. Today we are talking about the Monster Ed Gein series that's on Netflix. Y'all, this series is insane. From top to bottom, Monster, the Ed Gein story will have you in a chokehold. You might not want to watch it at night because it is very creepy. Even though I have a strong mind, so I didn't have any nightmares when I watched a few episodes at night. I definitely watched some of these episodes when my son was napping so that it wasn't, he wasn't seeing or hearing anything inappropriate. And I put some Bluetooth on so that he couldn't hear anything and I could just hear it through my headphones. I really wanted to get this story out for you guys. Really, I think my motive in doing these type of videos, as you guys know, is that I feel like some of this is preventative. I've seen a lot of talk. I mean, when I say a lot of talk, I mean a lot of talk. Like on TikTok, everybody is talking about the Ed Gein story. And most of them are saying things like they feel sorry for Ed Gein and that some of them disagree with that and say that, he was a killer, he did really bad things, and that you shouldn't feel sorry for him, and that, of course, the show was trying to humanize him and really give you backstory on why he did the things that he did. I think that's the whole point of him being in the Monster series. And of course, he inspired some of the gory horror films that we see today, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Silence of the Lambs. Not only did he inspire movies about serial killers, but he inspired the serial killers themselves that would appear after Ed Gein's death and during, his old age, like Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, Richard Peck, Gacy, and more. So, he's known as the Butcher of Plainfield, as they call him. He was born in literally the early 1900s. So, 1906, he was born. And he was born, during the war. And I can imagine that, the things that he saw, like they depicted in a documentary, were very difficult to see, especially the pictures of like what was going on in Germany with the Nazis and how they were killing the Jews. Those were some of the first pictures that people ever saw of dead bodies piled up on top of each other. That was like proof that something really bad was going on. And this was much unlike slavery, where there's literal proof of someone actually committing mass murder. And during slavery times with African Americans, there was limited proof that it was going on. It was literally society was running slavery. Slavery was a part of the government, so it wasn't seen as something bad. It was literally a part of the way that America was running itself. Was off the backs of black people. So there wasn't many pictures of exactly what they were doing to people. During the war, you got a chance to see, them throwing babies in the fire, and y'all know. And even at the Holocaust Museum here in DC, the exhibit with all the shoes, like everything, you know what I'm saying? It was literal proof of a mass murder. That's what, was happening during the war. And Ed Gein was one of those people during that time that was like fascinated, but in a twisted way. Okay, so we know Ed Gein, he had a very profound connection with his mother. That was one of his only connections with a person that he's ever had. I know he had a connection with somewhat with his father, but his father was an alcoholic and his mom, kicked him out of the house. So it was just her and her boys living there together, running the farm. And, Ed Gein had a brother named Henry, and that was his older brother. She raised her sons because the father was an alcoholic. He couldn't really help with the raising of his sons. And she took over and basically taught them that women were sin and having babies with women were sin. and that they were to never get married and never have children. So she raised them to think that women were bad and things like that. Ed believed everything that she said and, wanted her love and her affection, even when she didn't give it back to him, even when she basically told him, like, I wish you were a girl. I wish I had a daughter, but God didn't see that fit. He gave me you guys, and here we are. She constantly made him feel like he wasn't good enough, and he still loved her anyway. And Henry, he wasn't really feeling that. He did not like his mother in that way. He thought she was crazy. He liked girls, like he wanted to have his own family, and he eventually fell in love with someone. But his life was cut short by his brother Ed Gein. So we all know what happened with Ed Gein. His mother passed away shortly after Henry was found under suspicious circumstances. His body was found in a fire that got out of control on the farm. In the autopsy, you could see that he had bruises around his neck. It gave, asphyxiation, and he had bruises. He had bruises on the back of his head that, looked as though he was struck with something. And it was also seen that he, his heart failed before the fire had started. So why Ed Gein wasn't, investigated and charged with his murder, I don't know. But his mother soon had a stroke right after that happened, right after her first son's death. She had a stroke, and then the next year she passed away. December 29th, 1945, she passed away. And Ed's life was forever changed. That was the only connection that he had. He did have a friendship slash relationship with a woman named Adeline. That was the woman in the documentary. She had a relationship with him, but other than that, I don't think that he had many relationships with anybody in town or anything. They knew of him, but they didn't, hang out with him or anything like that. He spent most of his time as he grew up on that farm. So he didn't have friends. He didn't, I don't think he went to school, or maybe he went to school, but I don't think he had friends. He ain't had no girlfriends. He just was doing chores. So she kept him isolated from the outside world as much as she could. So the whole world shattered. And maybe she did that because she didn't think she was going to die, but it's just a part of life. So he literally developed schizophrenia after she died. He was hearing voices, thought he heard her. He started digging up bodies, that looked like her, and exhuming the bodies, mummifying the bodies, turning the skin into furniture. Just a bunch of like really fucked up shit. Excuse my language. The whole house was destroyed with, just, there was flies everywhere, there was dirt everywhere. He just literally, the house was decaying from the inside out. The only thing that was kept well cleaned is her room. Everywhere else in the house, it was nasty. He would just eat and just throw things around, and that's a part of grieving and depression too, just letting your house, everything around you, just go to filth. To be honest, it's a tricky situation because he dug up bodies, and he had sex with the bodies. I believe he ate a few people. He did a lot of things that was just like crazy. He was the first to be discovered to do such a thing, to be a cannibal, to make furniture out of skin and things like that. Like nobody had ever heard of that before. So when he murdered a woman in town and her son was looking for her, that's when the investigation started into his home, and it made everything public that he was in fact like a murderer. He eventually was arrested, of course, and he wasn't found guilty for reasons of insanity. And I have my thoughts on that as well, which we'll get to in a second. But he wasn't found guilty for reason of insanity. He was sent to Mendota mental health institute, and he was a resident there for 30 years, and he eventually died of lung cancer July the 26th, 1984. In the Netflix series, a part of what I really enjoyed was them talking more about Anthony Perkins, because y'all know Psycho is one of my favorite stories. And what is the other show? Oh, so I watched a movie. I watched the movie Hitchcock on here, and they started talking about how Ed Gein was the inspiration behind the movie Psycho. And that's when I first heard about Ed Gein, but I didn't really dive into it. I didn't think nothing of it, but I was like, it did intrigue me. And it was like, damn, this is like a real person, like, was dressing up like his mother, because that's the focus of Psycho, is like he dressed up like his mother and he was killing people. That was like the Cinemax, like the horror, the thriller part of it, was that he was literally dressing up like his mother and killing people. In real life, Ed Gein wasn't doing that. He was literally dressing up like her, but in the privacy of his own home. Like, it was almost like he didn't want nobody to see him like that, but that was how he was most like comfortable, was dressing up like her, wearing her clothes. Like, it made him feel closer to her after she died. It was kind of like the Ed Gein side of things, but in Psycho, he literally, it was some of the same elements. Like, he heard her voice often, and Ed Gein felt the same way because he had the schizophrenia. So he thought he heard her voice, thought he heard her telling him to do stuff. Like, that was like the focus of Psycho 2, was like the domineering mom, the mom that just was overbearing, didn't want him to have relationships with women. But in Psycho, it was like when he became aroused, he turned into his mother and he killed people. So that was like the difference. But I did enjoy that in a Netflix series of them talking about more about Anthony Perkins, because I always thought, like, I didn't see him in any other movies or anything. I'm sure he did have something else, but seeing him in multiple films after that movie, and it was so profound for his career that he it was hard to see him as anything else back then. I feel like that was a way that they typecasted him in Hollywood, was like he was always seen as like that weird, creepy guy. So he didn't really get many roles after that. So I always wanted to know what happened in between that, because I heard that he passed away from HIV. Because I did see the Psycho too. Knowing the behind the scenes about Anthony Perkins, knowing that he was gay and that he was really hiding it from Hollywood, and seeing the trouble that he could have possibly went through, because a lot of the Netflix series was fictional. A lot of it wasn't like based completely off real life, but of course they got to beef certain things up for entertainment. Like, for example, them making Adeline really really cute, in the Netflix series. She wasn't cute in real life. I'm sorry, but she wasn't cute, and did do a good job at possibly like describing what could have happened between the two of them, describing the fact that he possibly did have a romantic relationship, in real life, aside from being so close to his mom. It's very possible, because he was an outsider in town. There was a girl outsider in town too, you know what I'm saying? So my point in really making this video is to suggest also that Ed Gein would have been caught for murder. A lot of people's point of view is that the schizophrenia is the reason why he did the things that he did. And I think that was his alibi as well. And I don't think that that's the truth. I think that he already was a strange guy. He already had the capability of being a murderer. And let's just keep it a buck. He killed his own brother before his mother died. So people can say like he lost his mind, whoop de woo, after his mother's death, which is totally understandable. I mean, when you lose your mind to the point of being schizophrenic, you do have a fragile, mindset. I personally think that your brain has to be like Play-Doh in order to get to that point. And two, with Augusta, if she was as domineering as she was, it's no telling like what she might have done while she was pregnant. Because I mean, how could she be a pregnant woman and think that having a baby is sin? You know what I mean? And she was with the father, so I don't know, but it's no telling. But as far as we know, Ed Gein didn't have a mental disability until after her death. And that could have prompted him to do things, because I do think people that have schizophrenia can be a danger to themselves and others. So, do I think that it has something to do with him killing people? Possibly, possibly, but he already was a murderer. Like, he already was a murderer. I mean, it was never actually proven, but let's keep it G. Like, if that was Ed Gein's only sibling and he was the one that had the guts to leave the farm and marry some woman that was previously divorced, which was a sin. Marrying in general was a sin to their mother, but especially marrying someone that was already married before twice was a sin. She thought everybody was a hoe. So if he was the only one out of him and the father that had the guts to leave the farm and live his own life, I'm pretty sure like Ed thought that he was having his mother's back and assaulting his brother. And I'm sure he probably didn't mean to kill him, but at the same time, when you hit your brother in the back of the head with a log, you meant to kill him. Come on now. And you know, that's pretty far. I think that's a pretty far step to take. Matters into your own hands. But he was already a murderer. He killed his brother. It wasn't proven. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know what's up with like what was up with like the doctors and shit back in the day, because if you tell me that he has marks around his neck like he was strangled, and then he has like a, a mark on the back of his head as if he was struck by something, and then this fire just doesn't burn his corpse. You know what I'm saying? Like, and he was already cold before. Like, how's his body cold if there he was burned? You know what I'm saying? Like, look, it don't take a rocket science to see that somebody killed him and laid him right there. Like, let's be real. So he was already a murderer before he dug up bodies, had sex with them, all the other things that he did to those bodies, and then killed a few women as well. He was already a murderer before then, before his mom passed away. So the idea that he lost his mind, sure, but he was already a murderer. So what can you say now? It was inevitable. He was going to kill someone. He would kill anybody for his mother. Let's keep it real. He'd do anything for his mother. And to me, the fact that her voice got so sadistic after death, and in the way of him thinking that she was saying dig up these bodies or kill these people, if that's what he was hearing her say, that was his thoughts. That's something that he wanted to do. That didn't have nothing. That wasn't what she was saying before. All she used to say was Jezebel, and I call her Pandora because she has a filthy box and stuff like that. Like, that's what she was saying before he died. She wasn't saying nothing before she died about him killing people. Like, she wasn't never, you know, telling him to do nothing like that. I feel like those are his thoughts twisted into the form of her. And that was his reality and non-reality fighting each other. Like, he wanted to do those things. And I think that the insanity part was not I don't think that he should have went to jail, because you have to be, at the same time, I don't think that he was cognizant that he did what he did. I don't think that he was connecting with it. But I think that he didn't, I don't think he forgot what he did. I think he just didn't connect that it was wrong. I think that he had a hard time thinking that it was something wrong to do, even though it's obviously wrong. I don't know. I just think if they would have charged him for his brother's death, a lot of women would have been saved. The women that were killed wouldn't have been killed, and a lot of the bodies that he dug up wouldn't have been dug up and desecrated. But that's just my take. I want to know in the comments what y'all thought about the Netflix series. Did y'all think it was a good depiction of Ed Gein's life and his story? I thought it was pretty cool and interesting. I definitely know that they beefed it up for ratings and they beefed it up for entertainment value. Um, and I think that they did want to like humanize it and make people kind of feel sorry for him, but just to be totally honest, I don't feel sorry for him. I only feel sorry for the fact that he had a mother that was very controlling and that he felt like he couldn't escape that. And I feel sorry as well for his father, for him having a father like that, because if his father was a lot stronger, he could have really helped and saved his both of his children from having a hard, tough, and scary life. And also, I just feel like at the end of the day it takes two parents. If there's no working through the issues, then it's hard to help the children. So I really feel bad for his upbringing. What he did when he was an adult, it's it's like I don't feel sorry for him because he did do really bad things, but at the same time he did spend a lot of time isolated. He did spend a lot of time in that house by himself with nobody. His brother was gone. It was just him. So it's like, how can you get help if you're alone and you're not seeing that anything is bad? You know what I'm saying? You don't have any friends. You don't really have a girlfriend. So there's nobody around you to tell you, hey, like, you gotta fix this. You can't keep living like this. I did enjoy the elements of Anthony Perkins, because if he was, I mean, I can only imagine how it must have been back in those times when you have a secret in Hollywood and you're trying to keep it under wraps, and you don't want it to be exposed, and it was a lot of that going on back in those times. Of Psycho, I feel like it came out in 1960, so it was either the 50s or the 60s. So it was a lot of that. It was a lot of, you know um men that were gay, that were trying to hide it, that were getting married to women so that they could cover it up, all of that, just so that they could have a career in Hollywood. And back then that was a no-no. You couldn't be gay. So I can only imagine like how he was, because there was also, who else? What's the name? Rock Hudson. He was fine as hell, but he was gay and he was trying to hide it until he didn't want to hide it no more. I think he was like the first actor to go on TV and talk about being gay. He actually came out on national TV. It was a good series. I thought it was interesting when they talked about the other movies, and which elements of the movies was adopted from Ed Gein. I thought that was interesting, with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the Silence of the Lambs. I thought all of that was really cool. The Richard Peck part I could probably do without, and if you know, you know. If you've seen it, then you've seen it. I had to look that up for myself to see if that was real, because I was like, what? He took hormones so he can get boobs. Okay, now. But I thought another part I thought was interesting was the Christine Georgensen, the first transgender. And when he had a psychotic episode and he thought he was talking to her, and she was like, "No, I don't think you're a tranny. I think you're a gynophiliac." And you basically like the look of women and you like women sexually, but you it's almost like you admire them so much that you want to be them, but you don't, but it's not because you feel like you're in the wrong body. Let me know how you feel about the monster, the Ed Gein story, right down there in the comments. Let me know if you liked it, if you didn't like it. Let's talk about it in the comments. Thanks for watching. It's your girl, Unpopular, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.